We're here on Lee County Road 11, which is part of the destruction here in Beauregard, and a small community that really we've seen come together during this time of tragedy.
And we actually drove through on our way here. We drove through the other tornadoes damaged path. It was hard to pick out. We didn't have as many trees down, but remember, Lee County hit by 2 tornadoes. One started in Macon County, moving into Lee County. That was a weaker storm overall. This one, of course, the big one, that's what caused the damage that you see behind us there. But I talked to a gentleman a little while ago. He was speculating, and again, we don't know this to be true or not, but he said an ambulance was flying down the road earlier, getting into one of those areas that was actually very hard hit. So I don't know what that might mean, but just something that we'll be watching in the newsroom as far as any developments that might come out of that. You hope always that maybe they found somebody that was missing. We'll have to see about that. All speculation at this point, of course, but that's kind of the story here is the absolute devastation. But like you said, the community coming together. In fact, Lee County said they don't need any more things for people to bring. They don't need any more items to hand out. No more toiletries, things like they have so much because of the initial response.
In fact, Lee County Sheriff Jay Jones, who I talked to today, he told me, I asked him, okay, what's the best way for people to help? Because if the Lee County EMA saying yesterday afternoon, we don't need any more stuff for you to bring, he said the best thing to do is to bring gift cards. Okay. Bring gift cards, Visa gift cards, Walmart gift cards, bring those to the Lee County Sheriff's Department, hand them to your friends and bring them together to the Lee County Sheriff's Department so they can buy the things they do need for the search and recovery, for all the cleanup. And speaking of the cleanup, you know, he's doing a lot of work back here, the homeowner here in the farmland, and there's a big pile of tin, and you know, we saw that a lot of this, just these roofs just being torn right off of just, you know, barns and houses and all kinds of things, and just there's piles and piles of things just like this all along the road in East Alabama and Beauregard, and just roofs torn right off the foundation. And unfortunately, the mobile home communities, that's where the most deaths occurred, because it was like the sheriff described it as a knife just kind of ripping down the bottom of the ground and just making it from a mobile home to now just a slab.
And when you talk about pieces like this that are flying around, remember, in a tornado, this is a missile. This is a missile flying through the air at 170 miles per hour. So pieces of tin, pieces of boards, pieces of whatever become very dangerous. That's why we always encourage, of course, putting as many walls between you and the tornado as possible. That's kind of your safe spot. That's why we want you in that interior room, because stuff like this can become deadly inside a tornado.
Absolutely, and we have live team coverage throughout East Alabama and West Georgia covering the tornadoes and the aftermath. It's only been about 50 hours since this occurred, and so there's still a lot to be done. We'll have much more coming up after the short break here on News Leader 9.
I spoke with several homeowners in the Mountain Brooks community today who say they're lucky to be alive after Sunday's tornado. Now they're working on picking up everything the tornado tore down.
All of a sudden we hear the freight train sound that you hear with a tornado, and I said, what am I hearing? My husband said, well, I think that's a storm, isn't it? And I said, well, we need to get to the closet.
Tracy Willie has lived in Pine Mountain for over 20 years. She says they were watching WTVM's weather team Sunday when the tornado came through their neighborhood.
We kind of looked at each other and felt, you know what, our house is fixing to go and we're going with it.
Her neighbor, Ruby Bouchel, was also home when the storm swept through.
Just everything hitting the windows and everything. I mean, you can't even describe the sound. It was unbelievable, unbelievable.
Neither Tracy or Ruby suffered severe damage to their homes, but downed trees blocked them from leaving their own driveways. Tracy says once the storm was over, they were devastated by the dozens of fallen trees on their property. But she says their damage is nothing compared to others.
You know, it's one thing just to lose stuff, but when you lose your heart and your soul with your family members, I can't even imagine what that devastation would feel like.
Tracy, Ruby, and their families are now in the cleanup process, and they're getting a little help.
Well, our public works director, he called down and wanted to know if they wanted any help, and they did need help, so we come down and help out.
We'll just continue to clean up, and then once we're settled in our world, then we're going to go and start helping those that were that didn't fare as well as we did.
LaGrange's public works director says they'll most likely have crews out here all week helping clean up this neighborhood. Reporting live in Pine Mountain, Samantha Servin, WTVM News Leader 9.
All right, thank you. And also in Harris County, officials continue to return power and also move any kind of debris out of the way of the road so people can travel through there. And while the area is seemingly making a pretty fast recovery after the tornado, some neighbors are left asking what is next. Joining us now live with our continued team coverage in Waverly Hall is our Sharifa Jackson. So Sharifa, what's happening where you are right now?
And nearly every single home on the Mount Airy Road has significant damage, most of it from fallen trees on the property, but others, they say, it's just as if a whirlwind came and took their roof away. The inside of their house is just torn apart. And I went inside the home of one homeowner, Yvette DeJesus, who's lived here for 11 years. She says she's never experienced anything like this before. And she says she wasn't home when the storm came through, but she says her son was, and he only had seconds, she said, to take cover in the bathroom with his girlfriend. But she says even though her house is lost, it could be worse.
I was just, I guess, more in shock than anything else. And material things you can replace, you can't replace your children. So I mean, it's just devastating, but we'll be okay.
Now, DeJesus and her sons and also their neighbors, they are picking up and salvaging what they can. DeJesus says she plans to move to Columbus and rent a house out for now while she sorts everything out in this area. Now, as for other neighbors, a lot of people, they are staying elsewhere at the time, and the power has been out here for since Sunday afternoon, and crews, they are working to restore the power. They say right now only about half of the street has it back, but they're hoping everyone will have their power restored by late this evening. For now, reporting live, Sharifa Jackson, WTVM News Leader 9.
Hi, Chief Meteorologist Derek Kincaid here with you. We're back in Beauregard, of course, live here on the ground at the scene of really when the tornado that moved through Lee County started to gain most of the strength. I'm right here at the woodline at the farms that we've been reporting at here today. You can actually see, as far as the eye can see, back behind me, those trees just snapped off. Some of them about maybe 20, 30 feet up. You just see the tree breaking, and that is the sign of a very strong tornado that came through. Those winds twisting and pulling very quickly. Some trees were uprooted. Big pine tree in front of me here was uprooted, but most of the trees just sheared right off, and that continues way further back behind you, which actually we're looking north. If you look back this way, that's to the north, and that's where you start to get into the worst of what this tornado had to offer. The further that you go back deep into those woods, that's where we're starting to see some of the wind damage that was approaching EF3 plus EF4 strength, upwards of 170 miles per hour. And again, this storm, the strongest to strike Lee County since modern records have been kept, and at least the strongest storm to hit the county since 1875. Hi, Chief Meteorologist Derek Kincaid back here with you. Once again, right off County Line Road in Stewart County. We are inside the home of Winston and Julie Morrison. This home hit by an EF2 tornado, the same tornado that hit Eufaula, tracked across the river and tracked through Stewart County. I was going to walk you through the house here and show you what's going on. We're in the kitchen and dining room area now. The roof is gone. It's all open air through here, and you can see there's numerous things that have been blown around. They've also started the cleanup process as well around here. But we'll walk you back into the living room here. You can actually see behind me where the roof has caved in into a little bit of a V point right here. And this is not a room we ever suggest people to be in. We want people in a much smaller room because of this very thing. If you look over here, you can see the doors, the front doors, the glass has been blown out. That glass flying around inside the house, outside the house. That's why we want you in a room that doesn't have any windows, that doesn't have that glass. Now, if you follow me through here, we'll be careful ducking under some of the wood that's fallen down from the ceiling. This was the safe place for the Morrisons. This hallway, this little enclosure right here, they gathered in here with their 3 dogs bent down, hunkered down. They said they had pillows and blankets and things all around them, and this is where they rode out the tornado. During the storm, this door flies open. As it was flying open, they thought the door flew away, but they could see the rush of the winds and feel the air pressure change from the outside. And if you look up, I don't know if we can get a shot of this, but this is where the roof started to peel off of this little room. But it didn't, thankfully. One of the only places in the house where the roof was actually still attached. So an interior room, a small room, the lowest floor of your building, near the center of that house and away from windows, always your best bet in a tornado. Even though you can see the destruction all around them, the family survived without a scratch. The 3 dogs fine as well. Hi, Chief Meteorologist Derek Kincaid. You are looking at a bird's eye view from Sky Alert 9 of the property here where we are off County Line Road in Stewart County, a Lumpkin address there in the southern part of the county. And you can see just the devastation from this EF2 tornado, the same tornado that impacted Eufaula at the airport, crossed the river and headed this way. This one on the ground for 30 miles, a long track. Very strong tornado causing the devastation that you see here. Not a lot of houses in the path, but this one was, and you can see the destruction there from the bird's eye view. Look behind you, you can see the house there far in the distance that took some major damage, but otherwise seemed to get through this intact. But where we are, a lot of mobile homes, a lot of slabs, cement slabs just left bare by this tornado, this monster with winds at approaching 170 miles per hour as it really started to gain the most strength over the community that you see right here. Hi, Chief Meteorologist Derek Kincaid again here. We are live on the ground in Beauregard. If you watched the news at 5 o'clock, you saw me standing next to a big mobile home frame that had gotten blown away by this tornado, or maybe that was at the top of this show actually, but if you look now, we can give you a different point of view on that. I'm standing actually on the porch where the mobile home was, but now you see about 30-40 yards away, that trailer frame is wrapped around what's left of a pine tree there, and off in the distance, again, you can just get a sense of some of what we've been dealing with across a large area here in Beauregard. Remember, this tornado was about a mile wide at its largest point. This is when it really started to gather that strength. Now, thankfully, a storm like that, it didn't sustain those 170 mile per hour winds for the entire track, but still an incredible sight to see here in Beauregard off County Road 38. One of the victims was, I forget the particular age, 8 years old or 10 years old or whatever. I mean, I can remember dropping down to my knees for just a second and just thinking, you know, my goodness, like these are, you know, we cover stories like this, we cover tragedies all the time, but then as soon as you're able to start putting, you know, the pieces together, a face to these names, you know, when we've been out talking with family members, with people that knew the victims, it's just a heartbreaking thing for something, especially that nobody can control. I mean, you're talking about a tornado, as we've mentioned, that was on the ground for more than 70 miles. Strongest tornado in Lee County since 1875. The strongest to strike the Chattahoochee Valley since modern records have been kept in 1950. And, you know, in some cases, especially if you're in a mobile home or if you're in a home that maybe isn't anchored down properly, it's going to be very tough, even when you're doing the exact things that you need to do to be able to get through without the help of a miracle.
Wow, and you were just talking about some of the young victims. The 6-year-old Armando A.J. Hernandez, his funeral was set for 2 o'clock, I believe 2 o'clock Central Time, so that's probably getting ready to start. We have a crew maybe going there and going to be sensitive to the family members. And by the way, if the president arrives at Fort Benning, we will take that live as we get that video coming in, because could be doing that any minute now, arriving back at Fort Benning. And the weather, I guess, pretty decent today, at least, for the president's visit, because I know that, you know, obviously much different than it was 5 days ago. So, because I know Alabama Governor Kay Ivey was here earlier this week. She's back out there today, and it looked like they were in the same area where we were yesterday, last night. That area, like, you know, I was talking about earlier, just takes your breath away when you walk around and see that. You were able to kind of walk and show folks some of the cars and some of the places that are just buried. Well, when we were able to get in yesterday, we saw too some of the they had set up the orange road cones where they had different roads blocked off, and we saw when we were leaving yesterday the American flags lining all of those cones, and there were signs that were welcoming the president with his visit. So we had an idea last night that's probably an area that the president was going to be able to be on the ground and to see firsthand some of that damage. But just again, when we were down on the ground yesterday, being able, you know, when you get up close to
a place where you know that just around you that there were fatalities, there were deaths with that storm. When you see mangled pieces of metal and mobile homes that have been just ripped from their foundations, or homes even that have been swept from their foundations, it really makes you think about the power of the storm. Their word and true to their instructions from the chain of command, no, you can't get through. I mean, there's heavy equipment being used. There's the search and recovery effort that's still going on. So that's, again, you can't say enough about the state troopers that are involved, the police, the fire, the EMA, not just within Lee County, but everybody that has sent folks over to help. I'm sure from the surrounding area. I mean, what a marvelous job that they have done with this situation in Lee County, despite the tragedy.
Absolutely. And Kathy Carson, you mentioned earlier from Lee County, I believe Emergency Management, that she was there with the President and First Lady today, along with Alabama Governor Kay. They were the ones on the ground with the President and First Lady as they toured that damage in Beauregard and got to see just the complete destruction of at least one, semi-large community. And we were talking about how, a lot of people may not know this, but Beauregard, it's out there, it's unincorporated, it doesn't have its own mayor, it doesn't, some people that live there maybe have an Opelika address,
right.
But out in Beauregard, it's close to about 10,000 people that live out there, so it's a fairly large community. This is not a small town, but, and that is Ben Carson that's behind the President and First Lady, who was with him today, kind of part of the escort.
And he is Secretary of Housing and Urban Development?
Yes,
is that
correct,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And here, as we take a live look now, Air Force One is leaving Fort Benning's Lawson Army Airfield as it just arrived there about 3.5 hours ago. So really spending a big chunk of the afternoon, the President and First Lady in Georgia and Alabama. Most of that time obviously spent in Lee County, which was the hardest hit from Sunday's tornadoes that we've been talking about all week. The EF4 that was had just such strong winds, and we have 23 lives lost because of that. We have some remarks from the President as well. We can keep showing this picture live of the Air Force One leaving as we tell you what President Trump told the first responders. Everyone's doing an incredible job. These are incredible people. Met some survivors and family members. One woman lost 10 people in her family. Never seen anything like that. Thanks for the job you do. I wanted to make sure to get to Georgia as well. Got hit a bit too. Going to talk about that later. So again, he acknowledges Georgia, like we were talking about earlier. You can't forget some of the devastation there in places like Talbotton, and we were in Lumpkin earlier this week, even North Columbus, and places like that we've kind of tried to spread our team all the way out, and trying to use as many resources as we can. But Lee County again really hit.
And as we said, despite the circumstances of why the President is here, I still think that people are just happy to see someone of that caliber come to our area to show support for what they've been through.
Yeah, impressive for President Trump to be here in town, and nice weather for President Trump, and definitely nice weather for that, and also the search and rescue and all the cleanup that's needing to be done, Derek, and hopefully the weather will stay nice for at least a few days.
Hi, again, we are out here off of County Road 38, guys, and we talked a little bit about some of the cleanup. Around here, we have seen the roads have been cleared off. There's still plenty to be done, but remember, we've gone through 5 days of cleanup already, and things are still looking just, again, like utter devastation here across parts of the city of Beauregard. Again, we are on the road, on the ground here in Beauregard off of Lee County Road 38. We've got a bird's eye view of what's going on with Sky Alert 9 to give you just a better sense of some of the devastation. Remember, the tornado's width was a mile wide, or nearly a mile wide at its largest point. And imagine that kind of devastation over such a large path, over miles and miles and miles. And that's what you're seeing here right when the tornado began to gather most of its strength.